My name is Dr. William, and I want to tell you something. Your last doctor's visit almost certainly never covered. There is a muscle sitting deep inside your lower leg right now. It is tucked behind your shin bone underneath the bigger calf muscle you can see in the mirror. Most people have never heard its name. Most days, you probably do not feel it at all. But this small hidden muscle has a biological superpower that I have never once seen explained in a routine office visit. When you activate it, it pulls sugar directly out of your bloodstream. No gym, no diet changes, no medication. Just one tiny movement, and you can do it sitting down in your kitchen chair. A peer reviewed study out of the University of Houston measured exactly what happens when people switch this muscle on after a meal. The after meal blood sugar spike dropped by roughly 52%. Insulin release dropped by nearly 60%. That second number is the one that stopped researchers in their tracks. And once you understand why, you will never look at that afternoon energy crash the same way again. Drop your age in the comments right now. I read every single one, and it helps me understand exactly who needs this information most. Here is what almost no one explains to you in a 12-minute office visit. To understand why that crash hits you so hard after lunch, you first have to understand what glucose actually is. Glucose is sugar in its simplest form. It is fuel. Every single cell in your body runs on it. Your muscles burn it, your liver stores it, and your brain depends on it almost completely. Cut glucose off from your brain for just a few minutes, and your thinking slows, your words get foggy, and you lose your edge fast. So, glucose is not the enemy. It is a basic, non negotiable requirement for staying alive and thinking clearly. The problem is never the glucose itself. The problem is what happens when too much of it floods your bloodstream too fast and your body has nowhere useful to send it. When you eat carbohydrates, bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, anything sweet, your digestive system breaks all of it down into glucose. That glucose enters your bloodstream. This is normal. This is supposed to happen. The trouble starts when a large amount arrives at once. Picture a garden hose with the tap turned on gently. Water flows through, the hose holds its shape, everything works fine. Now, imagine someone cranks that tap wide open. The hose bulges. The walls strain under the pressure. That is roughly what your blood vessels experience during a sharp sugar spike. Your body detects the surge immediately and sends a signal to your pancreas, a small organ tucked behind your stomach. The message is simple: release insulin. Release it now. Insulin is a hormone. Think of it as a delivery worker. Its job is to grab glucose out of the blood and carry it into your cells where it can be burned for energy or stored for later. Some goes to your muscles, a lot goes to your liver, where it gets packed away as something called glycogen, which is your body's emergency fuel reserve. But here is where the chain reaction starts to work against you. If your muscles are already fueled up and your liver is already full, and you are sitting still after dinner, your body still cannot throw that glucose away. It has to do something with it. So it pushes it into your fat cells, and once it goes in there, it is very hard to get back out. Meanwhile, insulin has done its job almost too well. It has cleared so much glucose out of your blood that your sugar level drops, sometimes lower than it was before you sat down to eat. This is the crash. And this is where all those symptoms you have probably blamed on getting older are actually coming from. Your blood sugar falls fast. Your brain, which runs almost entirely on glucose, sends out an alarm. Energy is running low. Fix this now. A wave of tiredness rolls over you. Your head feels thick. Your thoughts move slowly. Your eyelids feel heavy. And then comes that specific, almost desperate craving for something sweet, a cookie, a piece of chocolate, something from the cabinet that you told yourself you were not going to touch today. This is not weakness. It is not a lack of willpower. It has nothing to do with your character. It is pure chemistry. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do, protecting itself from running out of fuel. Let me tell you about someone I will call Linda 44. from Columbus. Sharp woman, works as an accountant, excellent at her job in the mornings, but every single afternoon, after lunch, she hits a wall. Head foggy, numbers on the page stop making sense. And like clockwork around 3, she walks down the hall to the vending machine and buys a chocolate bar. For years, she told herself she just had no discipline, but that was never the truth. Her brain was running the same biochemical cycle every afternoon. The chocolate pushed her blood sugar back up, then it crashed again. By 6 in the evening, she felt completely wrung out. Even on days when her workload was perfectly normal, she was not exhausted from work. She was exhausted from a blood sugar roller coaster that nobody had ever taken the time to explain to her. And every one of those roller coasters costs you something real. Every spike forces your pancreas to release more insulin. Once, twice, 100 times, 1,000 times over the course of years. And eventually, the bill comes due. Now, before we go further, I want to pause here because what I have covered so far is just the foundation. The mechanism underneath the crash, the simple biology of fuel and demand, is the exact same framework that explains what I am about to share next. And the practical tool I will give you is genuinely one of the most underrated things in preventive medicine today. If you are finding this useful, this is a good moment to scan the code on your screen or tap the link in the description below. I put together something called the Complete Senior Health Vault, which has 3 full guides covering the medications worth questioning, the foods that act like medicine, and a plain English manual for how your body changes after 70. It is everything I wish I had time to explain in the office in one place. The link is in the description, and you can scan the code on your screen right now. And stay with me, because the actual movement I want to show you and the University of Houston numbers behind it are coming up in just a moment. We're now back to the long game. Your pancreas is not infinite. It has a working life. And every time it has to fire off a large insulin response, it spends a little of that reserve. At first, it keeps up easily, then it slows. Then your cells begin to ignore the insulin signal altogether. This condition has a name, insulin resistance. In plain terms, it means the key is there, the lock is there, but the lock is jammed. Insulin is present, but your cells have stopped responding to it the way they should. To force glucose into the cells anyway, your pancreas has to produce even more insulin, more and more, year after year, working harder and harder for less and less return. The tricky part is this. For a long time, your routine blood work can still look fine. No official diagnosis, no alarm going off, but the fatigue is real. The belly fat is quietly creeping in. The cravings will not let up. You are living with all of this, and nothing on paper explains why. And here is the part that matters most. This exact moment, when nothing is officially wrong yet, is the easiest time to turn things around. In my 15 years of practice, I have watched patients come in with back pain, shoulder pain, headaches, a dozen different complaints. And when you dig just below the surface, the blood sugar picture tells the real story. I think of someone I will call Robert, 6'8", from Phoenix. Came to see me about knee stiffness, mentioned almost in passing that he had been hungry all the time for the past 2 years, hungry again within an hour of a full meal. His fasting glucose came back at the very top of the normal range. Not diabetes, not officially even pre-diabetes, but to anyone paying attention, that number was a warning. The pancreas was running near its limit. The only reason nobody had said anything before was that on paper, everything looked technically acceptable if this process is not interrupted. Insulin resistance eventually slides into prediabetes. Prediabetes slides into type 2 diabetes. And once you are dealing with type 2 diabetes, the complications begin showing up. Damage to blood vessels, problems with vision, kidney strain, wounds on your feet that heal too slowly. This is not a scare story. This is what primary care clinics across this country see every single week. But while your numbers are still in range, all of this can be slowed, stopped, and in many cases reversed. And the tool that does it is already inside your body. The code is still there on your screen, by the way, if you want to grab that vault. Inside every muscle cell, there are tiny structures that work like little furnaces. They grab glucose out of your blood, burn it, and convert it into energy for movement and heat while you are sitting completely still. Those furnaces are running on a low pilot light, almost no fuel needed. But the second a muscle begins to contract, those furnaces flare up. They start burning glucose at a dramatically higher rate. Here is the part that changes everything. Normally, glucose needs insulin to unlock the door into a cell. No insulin, no entry. But a working muscle has a back door. It can open that door itself, no key required. This is a completely separate biological mechanism. It activates the instant a muscle contracts. Glucose flows straight from the bloodstream into the working muscle cell. Your pancreas does not have to get involved. Your blood sugar drops. Insulin stays calm. The roller coaster never builds up momentum. This is why the 90 minutes after a meal are the single most valuable window of the day for your metabolism. That is exactly when glucose is rising. That is the moment when your muscles can intercept it directly before it gets pushed into fat storage and before your pancreas has to fire off another large insulin release. Now, which muscle does this job best? That is where the hidden muscle I mentioned at the start comes back into the picture. On the back of your lower leg, just below the knee, there are two muscles stacked on top of each other. The one you can see, the round bulge of the calf, is the gastrocnemius. That is the muscle you feel when you stand on your toes. But underneath it, deeper inside the leg, sits a second muscle called the soleus. Most people have no idea it exists. It does not show in the mirror. You cannot really isolate it just by squeezing your calf. And yet, pound for pound, when it comes to pulling glucose out of the bloodstream, no other muscle in your body comes close to matching it. Researchers at the University of Houston designed a study around this muscle specifically. Their findings were published in the peer-reviewed journal iScience in 2022. They had participants sit in a chair after eating and perform one simple movement: lift and lower the heels while keeping the toes flat on the floor, not standing, not walking, sitting. The kind of movement you could do at a desk, on a couch, watching television, talking on the phone. Nothing about their day had to change. The results were striking even to the researchers themselves. The after-meal blood sugar spike dropped by roughly 52%. Insulin release dropped by close to 60%. The pancreas barely had to engage because the soleus was clearing glucose from the blood fast enough that a large insulin response was simply not needed. You can try this right now. Plant both feet flat on the floor. Keep your toes pressed down. Now lift your heels slowly and lower them back down. Up, down, at a relaxed pace. No force, no rush. Nobody around you will notice a thing. 10 to 15 minutes of this after a meal is enough to produce a real measurable difference in your blood sugar curve. The soleus is the most efficient single tool available to you, but it is not the only one. The more muscles you bring into the picture after eating, your legs, your core, your back, your arms, the more glucose leaves your bloodstream and the faster it goes. Here are 3 more options, and all of them fit into a normal day with no special planning required. The first is a short walk after eating. In my own practice, I have watched this one simple habit change a person's energy entirely within a week. One study compared 2 groups given the same meal. One group sat quietly afterward. The other group took a 10-minute walk at an easy, comfortable pace. The walking group's blood sugar peak was roughly half that of the sitting group. Not an hour on a treadmill, not interval training. 10 minutes, easy pace. You can step outside, walk laps around your living room, climb the stairs in your building a couple of times. The only rule is to move instead of sitting. The second option is squats. They work even faster than walking. because squats activate the largest muscles in your entire body, your thighs and your glutes. Bigger muscles, more glucose pulled out per minute. Stand tall, feet about shoulder width apart, toes angled slightly outward. Lower yourself as far as feels comfortable. You do not need to go deep. Keep your back straight. Let your knees track in the same direction as your toes, then push back up. 10 repetitions, slow and controlled. A simple way to make this a habit is to tie it to something you already do. Turn the kettle on for your after dinner tea. While it heats, do your set. That is roughly the right amount of time to give your muscles a chance to grab the glucose that is rising. The third option is the most underrated of all, and almost nobody talks about it. Housework. Most people already do it. The problem is timing. They do it before the meal, or they sit down after eating and get to it an hour later once the sugar has already gone where it is going to go. The trick is to move right after eating. 15 minutes of cleaning up after dinner is, in terms of blood sugar control, roughly equivalent to a 10-minute walk. Wash the dishes by hand. You are standing and moving. Wipe down the counters. Sweep the floor. Your muscles are working. Your glucose is going somewhere useful. You do not even need extra motivation for this one because you are going to do it anyway. None of these 4 tools require you to rearrange your life. You do not need to wake up earlier. You do not need a gym membership. You do not need workout clothes or a trainer. You simply stop sitting still for 10 to 15 minutes after you eat. Or if you really want to sit and move your heels. That is it. There is one more thing worth saying clearly on its own. How quickly insulin resistance develops and how quickly you can rebuild insulin sensitivity depends a great deal on how much muscle you are carrying. After age 40, muscle mass naturally begins to decline if you do not actively maintain it. Doctors call this sarcopenia. Less muscle means a smaller glucose disposal system. A smaller disposal system means more pressure on the pancreas. More pressure means the roller coaster gets louder and harder to manage with each passing year. This is exactly why the after meal movement habit becomes more important, not less, as you get older. Not harder, not more intense, just more consistent. Drop your age in the comments below and tell me which of these you already do. I read every single one. Here is what to expect when you start doing this. Within a few days of moving right after meals, you will notice a difference. That post-lunch fog begins to lift, your thinking stays clearer in the afternoon, your energy stops dropping off a cliff an hour after eating, and that urgent, almost panicky craving for something sweet starts to quietly lose its grip. That alone would be worth it. But the longer game is even more important. Every time your muscles handle glucose directly, your pancreas gets a break. Every break is a small deposit back into a system that has been quietly running on overdraft. Year after year, those breaks add up. That is the difference between staying metabolically healthy into your 60S, 70S, and 80S and slowly drifting toward insulin resistance, prediabetes, and the complications that come after. Here is what I would suggest doing this week. Pay attention to what you actually do in the first 15 to 20 minutes after a meal. Try the seated heel raises at least once today and notice how you feel an hour later. And at your next doctor's appointment, it is worth asking about your fasting glucose number and, if your doctor thinks it makes sense, your hemoglobin A1C as well. That is a blood test that shows your average blood sugar over the past 3 months, a much more complete picture than a single fasting number. If you are currently taking a medication like metformin, or if you have been considering supplements that some people use for blood sugar support, those are conversations to have with your own doctor, not with a video. Never stop a medication on your own. Bring it to your doctor. They know your full health picture. I do not. What I can give you is the framework to understand what is happening and the right questions to ask. Everything I have shared here is meant to educate, not to replace the advice of the physician who actually knows your history. Use it as a starting point for that conversation. If this gave you something useful today, subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next, and drop your age in the comments below. Tell me which of these four tools you are going to try first. I read every single one. I made a video that goes deeper into exactly what happens to your metabolism after 70, the specific changes that most doctors never explain, and what you can do about each of them. I will put it right here on the screen. Go watch that one next.